I mean, there's definitely a civil service. I think when people call it the deep state, like it's making it sound somewhat more mysterious than it actually
Yeah.
is. Like there are people who work in offices, and as we were just talking about labor and capital in Silicon Valley, there's a deep state in Silicon Valley too that has infuriated all the bosses. And yes, you can take over a company with your own money and fire a bunch of people, but in 5 or 10 years, he may not be able to do that even at his own company. Like I think he'd have more trouble doing
Yeah.
that at Tesla today than he did in a unusual takeover of Twitter. Yeah, I mean, there is a state. Actually, when I initially conceived of my first book, and it had a kind of different structure back then, it was called The Deep State.
Hmm.
Way prior, this is 2011, I think it was, like way prior to
Wow.
Trump taking that term. Everybody's like, you can't use that. That's a term from Turkey. Like nobody's gonna. Okay.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, look, there is on the one hand a federal bureaucracy that needs to be used and deployed if you're going to do things right. The president doesn't run around carrying out the activities of the federal government by themselves. That due to civil service protections and other things, it has some insulation on certain issues. And also, unless you're being pretty extreme and typically like running afoul of the law or something, a talented administrator a talented administrator can move it in their direction, but even the most talented administrator, even when there's alignment between them and the state, cannot move it as fast as they would like. So I remember talking to Ron Klein about pandemic policy, and I remember him saying, I forgot what the exact point, but it was a very vivid way he put this. Where he's like, even when you are the president and people are like on the same side as you on an issue, and you stand up on the table yelling, this is the most important thing, you still may not be able to get the whole bureaucracy to activate in the way you want it to. So I think I think it got complicated. I think it got very complicated in the way people saw it because of Trump, who was not really trying to run it. He was more comfortable being in opposition to it than he was to being in charge of it. It's been a long time frustration of Democrats or Republicans come in and are able to use the thing for their purposes. So, you think of a more talented administrator, I don't know. Which is all to say that I'm sort of shadow boxing with what I think you're asking me about the deep state. And the answer is that the deep state, like any bureaucracy, is very complicated. And one of the funny things is it often is very frustrating for liberals who want to get things done because it's sclerotic and rules bound in other ways. And so it's like the problem for liberals is it follows the rules too much. And then the problem for, conservatives, but sometimes their advantage is like they don't care about the rules and will go around them in a way the liberals often won't. And so, it just kind of depends.